This is the Almost Timely newsletter for the week of September 3rd, 2023. Content authenticity statement. 100% of this newsletter is generated by me, the human. No AI was used to generate the content of this issue. There's a link in the statement that explains why this is important with this short little 4-minute video. Make sure you go watch that. What's on my mind this week? The evolution of work in the age of AI. This week, let's talk about the future of work in the age of AI. It's a topic that's been on the mind of lots of folks, from questions about how jobs will be impacted to how AI is going to change productivity to the nature of work itself. To dig into this topic, we need a foundational understanding of the impact large language models in particular and generative AI overall have. Why is generative AI such a big deal? We've had AI in some form for decades. You've been using AI in some form for decades, from maps on your phone to get you from point A to point B to spam filters in your email. In fact, I remember the first machine learning capabilities for spam detection came out in the late 1990s, right? We're talking 25 years ago. So you've been using AI for decades. AI is not new in any way. Many of today's theories and implementations of AI, they're based on theories and academic work done as far back as the 1950s. What's different about generative AI, in particular large language models, is the language part itself. Language is foundational to our civilization, to our species' ability to communicate intelligently to each other in a highly compact, highly efficient manner. We understand language not just as words, but as entire concept wrapped up in these little storage containers called words. Think about it for a second. How much information density is packed into a word that we understand? For example, if I say the word sunshine, how much is compressed into that single word? Images, maybe moving images in your mind, a feeling on your skin, maybe a smell, all these associations. There's so much nestled into the little context of that one tiny word, right? That is an incredibly efficient way to communicate a whole bunch of concepts all at once. Because language is so information dense, any kind of system that leverages and uses language, uses it well anyway, will communicate a lot of information in a very compact format. And that's what generative AI and large language models do so well. Take, for example, this 6-word poem by Ernest Hemingway. For sale, baby shoes, never worn. There's so much to unpack in just that single sentence, and that makes language an insanely efficient knowledge compression mechanism. Even in cases when we're not necessarily specific, language can dramatically narrow down the field of information. If someone says, Chris is a jerk, right, unironically, that may not convey why Chris is a jerk, but it certainly removes a bunch of possibilities for the kind of person you would expect Chris to be. Just with that single assertion, Chris is a jerk, the field of possibilities narrows. That's the power of language. So what does this have to do with AI? Large language models are built with those same inferences, those same probabilistic assertions, and as a result, they use language like we do. That is the single most important concept to understand. Large language models use language like we do. Underneath the hood, different architecture, math, and all that stuff, but for the end user, for our experience with them, they use language like we do. They learn language through context, through the context of words, just like we do. They remember things based on associations, on the strength of associations, just like we do. They construct words and sentences in a predictive manner, just like we do. That in turn means that we can communicate with them in incredibly information-dense ways, prompts, that create high-density outputs that convey a lot of information. So what does this have to do with the future of work? It fundamentally alters the equation of work itself, of the value created by the outputs of work, most of which, for office jobs, is language in one form or another. Right? That memo, that paper, that email, it's all language. Think about how much you use language every single day in every profession. Even jobs that are highly physical and nonverbal still use language in parts, from workers receiving instructions about what to do, to reporting the results of work, to your paycheck, it all uses language. The classic sort of textbook case, pun intended, that highlights this quandary is education itself. Large language models with good prompting arguably will write a better term paper on nearly any non-novel topic than any student will. The papers, prompted correctly, will be coherent, will be grammatically correct, will be well-structured, and generally will accomplish the task of ingesting a lot of information and then summarizing it from a certain point of view. Many colleges and schools have attempted to forbid the use of generative AI in schoolwork. As a result, I got emails from my kids' schools this week about their anti-AI policy. And this speaks to how fluent and capable the technology is. If the technology were as bad as the critics claimed, it can't think, it's not original, it's blah, it makes no sense. If the technology were that bad, no one would need to ban it, right? We don't ban things that don't work. We ban things that do work really, really well. And this reaction that schools in particular are having indicates the insane level of equality. If they recognize their teachers can't tell the difference between a paper written by a student and a paper written by ChatGPT, that tells you it's really good software. So the question is, what is the value of the task of writing a term paper? By extension, what is the value of the task of writing a blog post, writing a white paper, writing an email, writing some meeting notes, writing some marketing collateral, a call center script, an investor's report? The list of things goes on and on. Things that are language, that we use language to communicate, and that machines could arguably do better. So what is the value of work? Think about this carefully. Before the internet, we had to remember things. For those of you who have gray hair, you remember having to remember things. Once search engines came along, we didn't have to remember nearly as much because we could use a search engine to find the information we needed at the time we needed it. Did that make us dumber? Less capable? Poorer workers? Less productive workers? Of course not. It made us smarter, made us more capable, made us better workers because we could accomplish the same tasks, but faster and better. We didn't have to struggle to remember things. We just look it up. Before smartphones, we had to work in prescribed locations, either in the convenience of an office or by lugging around, a large piece of technology like a laptop computer. Back then, it was briefcase-sized, right? To get work done. With smartphones and wireless networks and 5G, we can do more from wherever we are. Does that make us less skilled? Less productive? Of course not. It's a ridiculous assertion. Mobility enables us to be far more productive workers, so much so that we have large conversations about, we can't leave work at the office anymore. We're never on vacation. Again, if these technologies didn't work, we wouldn't be having those discussions. These technologies are highly effective. In both technology examples, we are still generating the outputs of work, language in many cases, but we are enabled to do so faster, better, and cheaper by giving us capabilities we did not have. And this is the key to understanding the role of AI in every scenario, in every profession. Each wave of technology has brought us closer to the work, faster at the work, but we were still doing the work. AI abstracts that away at a much, much greater level now because it's doing a chunk of the work, right? It's no longer just helping us do the work faster. It's doing some of the work. It's doing the summary, the extract, the first draft, and then we're polishing it to make sure it meets standards and stuff. But that's why it's so transformational, because it's not just enabling us to do work faster, it's doing some of the work for us. Schools that ban the use of AI are like schools that ban the use of calculators, right? Or ban the use of smartphones. They're doing their students an incredible disservice by handicapping them, by forcing them to learn to work in less efficient, less effective ways. And when those students, particularly in higher education, when they enter the workforce, they will be behind their peers who have had years of practice with the best tools available. Right? They will have less time working with large language models, less time with diffusers, less time understanding how these tools can work. Imagine you went to culinary school and your instructors forbade you the use of any electrical appliances. You had to do everything by hand, all the chopping, all the slicing. You enter the workforce, and while you're conceptually, you know what a blender does, what it is, you're not skilled at its use. You don't have the 1,000 hours of time, making purees and stuff that your peers do. You are inherently less employable than someone with the same time and education, but more skilled with the modern tools of the trade. That is what banning AI is doing, right? You are making people less employable. AI is a tool of the trade for every profession. That is the crux of the issue. Generative AI and large language models are premier tools of the trade for every profession that uses language, which is pretty much every profession. I can't think of a single profession where no one communicates with language, right? Even that profession still use language. You can guess which one. That still doesn't answer the question about what the value of work is, does it? If a machine can write a term paper or a blog post and do a better job than we can, what is the value of work? The answer is that our value as humans is in the asking. The machine can produce the answers, but they produce answers commensurate with the skillfulness of the question. They produce work with the commensurate with the skillfulness of the prompt, right? So it is the skill of programming the machines. If I prompt, write a blog post about the B2B marketing, that's not a particularly skillful prompt, and the output will not be particularly skillful either, right? It will be very generic. It'll be very boring. If I prompt, you are an expert B2B marketer, you know lead generation, demand generation, scalability, marketing, market share, customer acquisition, customer retention. Your first task is to write a blog post about B2B marketing. The post should focus on the evolution of B2B marketing from analog to digital, from transaction to experiential, from selling to helping. Be sure to reference key societal changes such as the internet, the smartphone, and the dawn of generative AI and their influences on B2B marketing. Be sure to prescribe solutions for B2B marketers to remain effective in an era of constant change and deep uncertainty. Be sure to focus on lead acquisition as a key outcome in B2B marketing. Write in a professional, warm tone of voice. Avoid business jargon, avoid business cliches and tropes, avoid adverbs and passive voice. Write the post. That is a much more skillful prompt. It's a better question, and the answer the machine generates will inevitably be better. Try both. They're in the newsletter. Copy and paste them. Try both in the tool of your choice to see what the results are. This has been true forever. Better questions lead to better answers. Better prompts lead to better outputs. Better ideas create better realities, and that is the value of work. That is the value we provide, human beings. Right? Better questions. A term paper that's just a regurgitation of existing information teaches very little to the student, except rote memorization, right? A machine can write that paper. A machine should write that paper, right? There's not any value in regurgitation. There's no value. There's nothing special there. A term paper assignment that asks for deep synthesis, for novel thought, for questions people haven't asked, for making difficult or imperceptible connections within the material, that's going to be a much more interesting read. Whether it's written by a human or a machine, the question is a better question. That is the value we bring to the table. The people who are fighting AI on the grounds that it can't be original or creative fundamentally misunderstand that AI is as creative as the person operating it. The institutions who want to prevent its usage, schools, workplaces, governments, they also fundamentally misunderstand the role of AI. The role of AI in work is to replicate and extend our capabilities with language, to make us more skillful with language, and to offload the burden of generating language so that we can be thinking about how we're going to skillfully ask questions with language. Those who embrace the technology will dramatically outperform those who don't. 4 to 1, 5 to 1, 10 to 1. It's one of the reasons we say a person skilled at AI will take the jobs, plural, of people who are not skilled with AI. That's how big a difference this is going to make, because language is so potent. It is so powerful. It's like the way people who embraced automobiles dramatically outperformed those people still riding horses. Right? That is what's going to happen. That is the future of work. AI won't take your job. A person skilled with AI will. So your choice is, do you want to be the person skilled with AI, or do you want to be the person who's not? All right, what else happened this week? We did a really, really, really interesting live stream this week on generative AI and gender bias. It was absolutely stunning just how the biases show up in side-by-side tests. All we did was change the name in one piece of a prompt, and we got very, very different outputs. It is worth a watch, so go watch that show. Also had some discussions about how do you influence large language models for brand marketing, AI, and how it will improve and train over time, how it impacts the B2B buying process. So go check out those posts. If you like the keynote talk, which is at the top of the newsletter, if you like the keynote talk and you want to bring it to your company, if you want to bring it into your employee trainings and stuff, let me know. Got a link in there for talking about that. Jobs this week: AI content marketing specialist at E360. Starting to see those AI jobs popping up. Data analyst at Kindred Group. Growth marketing specialist at Carto. Lead data analyst at Kindred Group. Manager of marketing and audience development at the Podglomerate. Marketing operations analyst at Cogeco. Partner marketing manager at Carto. Senior optimization analyst at Wunderman Thompson. SEO technical manager at UMGC. Technical marketer at Media Authentic, and VP of Growth Marketing at Matillion. So lots of stuff happening there. In other news, Instagram is now testing 10-minute reels for long-form video content. Something called Lemon8, TikTok's sister app, explained. We have great content marketing examples. The state of SEO in 2024, going into that. ChatGPT, the Enterprise Edition, was released this week with flexible pricing, which is a code for expensive. For enterprises where they want to have those compliance measures like SOC2 compliance. So that's all in there. The U.S. Copyright Office is asking people for their feedback on AI and copyright. So there's some very interesting potential that's going to be happening there. As a brief aside, the current law is that machine-made outputs cannot be copyrighted. I fully expect big tech companies and big entertainment companies to challenge that, to ask for new laws so that their work can be copyrighted and they can use AI more for creative endeavors, and so that they can reduce the number of humans that they use. So there will be a battle coming in copyright in the next months, years, and it's going to be very interesting to see how that turns out. New codes accelerating the advent of practical quantum computing from IBM, and a new book from my friend Elena Azuara. If you'd like sapphic fiction, she just wrote A Handful of Sun. It's on Kindle Unlimited, so if you have Kindle Unlimited, you can get it for free, give it a read. It is a good read. It's a lot of fun. Upcoming events: ISBM Chicago in September, followed by Content Marketing World and the Marketing Analytics and Data Science Show. Content Jam in October back in Chicago. Marketing Props B2B Forum in Boston in October. Social Media Marketing World in San Diego in February 2024. So lots of shows coming up. More on the way. More are on the way, or just sort of getting the paperwork all taken care of. So if you would like me at one of your shows, now is the time to ask, because it's getting busy. That is the news for this week. Thank you for your attention, for being here, for sharing the content, sharing the newsletter with your friends and colleagues and stuff. I appreciate anything you can do to help get it into the hands of more people. And I'll talk to you next time. If you like this video, go ahead and hit that subscribe button.